Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out. I'm Chris Gorin. You know, normally on this show, we feature interviews on topics with a bit more shelf life, not beholden to the deadlines of daily news. Today, we're doing something a bit different because it deals with a story we think is too important to leave on the cutting room floor. And that's the sentencing of Hong Kong democracy advocate Jimmy Lai. In early February, Hong Kong authorities sentenced the 78-year-old British national to 20 years in prison. The charges stem from his time running the pro-democracy newspaper Apple Daily and Next News. Human rights experts and governments around the world have slammed the sentencing as a politically motivated attack on press freedom. The day after the sentencing, we spoke with Mark Simon, Lai's longtime aide, who is himself named in the national security case. Now, Simon has been calling for Lai's release alongside the Lai family. An edited version of that conversation aired the same night, but we thought some of you may want to hear the full interview, so here it is now. Mark Simon on the sentencing of Jimmy Lai. All right, Mark Simon, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So you worked side by side with Jimmy Lai for more than 2 decades. When you heard about the sentence, what was your reaction?
This trial, this arrest from day one, it's basically been a narrative the Chinese government and the Hong Kong government have to have. And so we knew we were going to go through this. They delayed this trial and delayed it as long as they could. They dragged it on. These massive 3-month, 4-month breaks. And once the trial ended, we were like, okay, we can get started. And we were always lobbying up until that point and talking to people and doing things and raising support. But frankly, people don't really, and in fairness, it's fair, governments and people don't really start getting motivated until they know they can do something. And Hong Kong was given the benefit of the doubt of having a legitimate legal system. So while it was slow, people were willing to give it a chance. Now, of course, I think the trial of Jimmy Lai and the trial of many others has proved that there's really not an English legal system there anymore. There's not the rule of law. That was a pillar of Hong Kong.
So for viewers who might not be that familiar with Jimmy Lai, tell us a little bit about him. When the cameras aren't on, what's he like?
Lai is one of the most unique individuals you'll ever meet. I actually think Taiwanese, because he was here, and has many, many Taiwanese friends. I mean, I spent yesterday meeting with government officials, and other people who are old friends of his and politicians who wanted to know how he's doing after the sentence. And he's a self-taught intellectual. And what I mean by that is Jimmy is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And I've met a lot of people, and he's intuitive in a manner that is incredibly disarming. And so when you're with Jimmy, you basically don't have to do a whole lot. In other words, he kind of senses what's going on. I have story after story of him basically reading a room really quickly. Now that comes from a very hard life. I mean, as people sometimes know, his formal story that everybody knows, came over to Hong Kong in the hold of a boat when he was 12, worked his way up to garments in a garment business, made a lot of money, went out and did some other businesses in between, some freight forwarding and some other things, went into media, had his political awakening when he was 1989, and has since then been really, quite frankly, an amazing man in terms of his, I would say, just lack of self. It's one of the things I noticed about him early on when I went to work for him.
So Jimmy Lai is 78 years old. He's been in solitary confinement for 5 years. When is the last time that anyone in his family spoke with him? And as far as they know, what's his current condition?
Oh, well, his wife sees him, 3 times or 4 times a month. His lawyers see him. So he is seen, unfortunately, it's only 30 minutes. I mean, in an entire year, his visitation time with his family is, less than 20 hours, combined. Jimmy is a strong man. I think if you look at some of the pictures, he's 6'1", he's a big guy. He's now 78. I've been with the guy for more than 20 years. That's when he was early 60s, so he could do it. Now, mid 60s. Now he's 78 years old. And it's just wearing down on him. He sits in a jail cell that's maybe, 8 by 14 or something like that, 8 by, our 6 by 14, whatever it is. He has no natural sunlight. They block the window. It gets really, really hot in there in the summer. He has rashes. They themselves admit that basically there's nobody around him, so he has kind of sensory deprivation. I think the goal is basically to punish him, but he's sitting in there and he's deteriorating quite quickly. And we want him out. He's now said he wants out very clearly to people. He's told the lawyers, he said, look, it's just time for me to leave.
And so, given his condition and his age, do you consider this to essentially be a life sentence for him?
If they don't intend to move him out, it's one of the most cynical life sentences there is, because you could give him a life sentence, or you could give him a 25-year sentence, but you give him a sentence at 20, essentially, they're now saying, well, it's under 20, it's 18 years. He's 78 years old in prison. An 18-year sentence, it's a death sentence, and they know it. He knew that there was a potential for himself to die in prison. He knew that, and that's the thing that people have to understand. He and I discussed it. He told me, make sure you take care of my family. I am hopeful that the Beijing, after pressure from Keir Starmer, the Irish Prime Minister, and of course President Trump, I think they now see this as something that's probably just better to resolve.
There's been some reaction from the U.S. government. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, issued a statement. He called it unjust and tragic conclusion. U.S. President Donald Trump has actually mentioned Jimmy Lai several times, and that he's brought it up with Chinese President Xi Jinping. I think there's some hope that he might bring it up yet again when he meets Xi in person in April. Have you or anyone else in Jimmy Lai's family been in touch with the Trump administration?
Yeah. Oh, we were in touch with the Biden administration. We have very good support from them. The State Department was wonderful. We've had good support all the way through from the U.S. Jimmy's a British citizen, so basically the Brits take the lead here and the U.S. backs him up, and that's been very effective. Sebastian Lai, Jimmy's son, met with President Trump over a year ago. We kept that quiet because we thought that was the best thing, but they sat in the Oval Office for close to 38, 39 minutes and talked about this.
Is there something specific that you hope that President Trump might ask Xi for in his meeting regarding Jimmy Lai?
I think I want him just to ask him, can he get on my plane and fly back with me? Or can I swing by Hong Kong and pick him up? I don't have that illusion that that would happen, but I do think President Trump is a business guy and he's a deal maker. And the problem that they have now, I wasn't amazed by it, but I was impressed with it. The reaction in the world, I think we're up to like 12 parliaments have made statements about Jimmy. The EU, the UN, they're all making these statements about Jimmy. They have a problem now. The Hong Kong government has, and I blame the Hong Kong government for most of this, the Hong Kong government has landed a hot potato in the CCP's lap. And now they've got a problem. And, one of the things we talk about Jimmy, and this is a huge problem for them, they sentenced Jimmy to 20 years. Liu Xiaobo, the Nobel Prize winner who died in prison in China, well, he only was sentenced to 11 years. So there's already talk in the Chinese web. Well, this guy was sentenced to 11 years and he won a Nobel Prize. Man, this guy must be something really special. Let's pay attention to him. And I hate to say it, that's in the, I have a little bit of time dealing with United Front and dealing with the Communist Party. That's a real problem for them. And the best way to get rid of that problem is to put Jimmy Lai on a plane and send him home.
Let's just assume for a moment that he's not freed through some U.S. government intervention or as a favor to U.S. President Donald Trump. Is there any legal pathway for Jimmy Lai?
No, the Hong Kong system is basically, they could make something up, which I think they did. I always make the comment, if Beijing tells them to release Jimmy and everybody's to wear pink dresses that day, we will see prison guards in pink dresses walking Jimmy up the fence, walking Jimmy up to the plane, the stairs to the plane. I do think there's options for them. I think the humanitarian release options are there for them. Whether and how they do it, if they transfer him to China and move him out, whatever it is, I think they can pretty much do anything they want. I think there are the procedures there. In their system, the communist system, you're always guilty. You know, what is it? Show me the man, I'll show you the crime. I mean, it's impossible in that system. I remember when we got a Wall Street Journal, Evan, out, when they got, I didn't say we, I shouldn't say we, but when they got him out, essentially they tried him in what, 3 days, and 4 days later, the trial was 3 days, not on the radar screen, and he was removed a week later. They can do anything they want. This is not a rule of law society anymore. So how they want to move him, they can move him.
I think you mentioned this a little bit of how Taiwan might be able to, this is the canary in the coal mine for them. I do think some people here do look to Hong Kong as a sort of cautionary tale. For you, what is the lesson that the people of Taiwan should be taking away from Jimmy Lai's case and what has happened in Hong Kong?
Jimmy was pro-democracy because he believed in democracy. But that was after we protect the one country, two systems, which I think people in Taiwan look at and say, okay, when we're offered a deal with the Chinese, can we expect the deal to be held up to? And the answer is no. And that Jimmy is part of that answer for the Taiwanese people. He is your canary in the coal mine. The Taiwanese just need to come to grips. Even the KMT plan, you're your own people, you're an identity. And the CCP will not allow that. So I got some bad news for you. They're not gonna come over here and say, oh, we want you to be this. They are scrubbing the identity of Hong Kong as it is, as nonchalant as Cantonese culture was. They're scrubbing it. They will scrub Taiwanese culture. So I myself think that the idea that there is some middle ground, there is some hope for people that you can make this deal with the devil, it's not there. Look, in Hong Kong, they arrested 10,000 people. They're prosecuting hard about 1,000 of those people. Taiwan? Are you kidding me? They came over here, what is it, 700,000, 800,000 people? You're going to have camps here like you'd have with the Uyghurs. And that's why I don't think that anything there with Jimmy is nothing more than a warning to the Taiwanese people. But it doesn't mean that you lose.
So what comes next for you and Jimmy Lai's family in terms of working towards his release?
I think justice is never going to happen. I think what we have to do is you have to be released. I think one of the things in life sometimes, you've got to learn to forgive and move on. And I think the thing is like, I'm not really angry at China. That's just China. What we want to do is just get him out. So basically the goal is to keep up the pressure, keep talking to people, keep showing China that this is the way out. I think the other thing that's happened really that changed the game is not this recent sentence, but I think the verdict and some other things where people are like, well, hold on here. You want to do business with us, you want to trade with us, that's fine. A couple of my Singaporean friends are very clear. They said, if Lee Kuan Yew was around, what he would have done with Jimmy, he'd have whacked him a couple of times and put him on a plane. Because he knows a dissident outside is far less of a threat than a dissident in jail. In other words, we all know this. When you're in prison, when you are there as a martyr, when you're there, you're powerful. Once you move them out, they're less powerful. Once people see him going in and out of restaurants in London, okay, he's okay. And the world moves on to something else.
Mark Simon, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's been great.
This has been Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more stories from TaiwanPlus News, check us out on social media or download the TaiwanPlus News app. I'm Chris Gorin. We'll see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and its friends in Europe, download the TaiwanPlus app or follow us on social media.